There's been a negative narrative around the Tar Heels and their success or lack thereof in the NBA in recent years. And frankly, I'm sick and tired of it. And so apparently is Cam Johnson because my man just got a bag.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Monday, July 3rd, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for making us your first listen or watch every single day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Coming up on the show, I want to take a look at the possibility that for the second or maybe third year in a row, depending on how you look at it, the Tar Heels might not have an NBA draft pick in the 2024 draft. Also got several odds and ends from various sports and things going on related to Tar Heels we'll wrap up with. But before we get there, I want to look at NBA free agency and how it can be hopefully changing the narrative of what I feel like a lot of people outside the program say about North Carolina's success. In recent years, because there is no denying historically Carolina's NBA success has been phenomenal. But because of the way Duke has recruited and the types of players they've gotten, same thing with Kentucky, there's been this like, oh, Carolina basketball players aren't what they once were. And I'm just like, come on, man. And I want to use Cam Johnson as a prime example of what I hope is a changing of that narrative. It's that free agent season that we're in right now. And Cam Johnson, my man, is in plum position. There are reports now out about what his package will be. Keep in mind his rookie contract just expired. He was traded to the Nets. If you don't keep too much tabs on the NBA, Cam had been playing with the Suns. He was traded to the Nets in the Kevin Durant deal. And earlier last week, Brian Windhorst had reported that the Nets would probably offer somewhere in the realm of 4 years, $84 million. But Windhorst estimated that it would probably end up being somewhere that same length of time, but somewhere between $90 to $100 million for Cam. Why? Well, the Nets obviously don't want him to walk. He has, taken a massive uptick since going to Brooklyn and being started into the starting lineup. But notably, he's got these other suitors, such as Detroit, whose new coach is none other than Monty Williams, who was Cam's coach in Phoenix. Also, the Rockets were apparently interested in Cam, and both of those teams could drive up Brooklyn's price. It's like, you're selling your house and you get multiple people into a bidding war. It don't matter who ends up buying it. You're going to get more than you intended to or asked for, really. And so it's kind of a beautiful thing for Cam. Now, again, career highs since he's been at Brooklyn. It was just 25 games this year, but average career high in points, 16.6, rebounds, 4.8, assists, 2.1, 46% from the field, or closer to 47% from the field, and 37.2% from three, all while making this move to Brooklyn. So undoubtedly, he's got all these suitors coming after him, Cam Johnson does, part of which is because he's doing all these things, but also a guy with his positional size that can shoot, that can play either forward position, is a guy that every NBA team wants right now because of the shot making capability. And so, there's all this speculation. And then Cam, the actual package is 4 years, $108 million. My man got paid and you love to see it. Now, that is the reported salary package. He can't actually sign it officially until this Thursday, July 6th, because we're in that period of the annual moratorium that started Saturday night. So players, teams, agents, whomever can agree on deals in the interim period, but you can't officially sign it until Thursday. Now, how did this come together for Cam? Did he field offers from these other teams? It sounds like no, that the Knicks were like, hey, the Nets, wanted to get this thing done, and so offered him this bigger contract. In fact, ESPN insider Kevin Pelton had this to say, quote, instead of risking an offer sheet to Johnson that would have been much more favorable to him in terms of payment schedule and trade bonuses, the Nets stepped up and re-signed him quickly with a deal that ranks 4th among this season's free agents in terms of maximum value. Holy Cam Johnson. Go ahead and tell me that Carolina is not doing what they need to in the NBA. He went on to say, Pelton did, Johnson's market figured to be robust given that every team needs players like him. Like I was just saying, the 6'8" Johnson can play either forward spot. That sounds like something I was just talking about. And is a 39% career three-point shooter on high volume, 8 attempts per 36 minutes. A quality reserve during his first 3 NBA seasons, Johnson stepped into a starting role this past year and was a featured scorer after being traded to Brooklyn at the deadline, averaging 16.6 points per game the rest of the way. So let's take this narrative about Tar Heels' lack of success in the NBA and just toss it, because you could find ways to point and poke holes in probably every college program. Yes, there are great NBA players from Kentucky at or near the top of the NBA. The same is true for Duke. But there are also guys from both of those schools that are not having that level of success. But here's why I think it's important that we work at changing this narrative, because I believe some of those schools that Carolina goes up against for recruits tries to use that against them to say, hey, listen, there's not Tar Heels right now playing at the top of the sport in the NBA. I don't know if you want to go there. You might want to come here where we can prepare you better. Well, come on, man. But the good news is if they can't always point that out anymore, if you've got guys like Cam Johnson rising higher and higher in the sport, Coach Davis and the staff can say, hey, you see that deal Cam Johnson just got? Come to Carolina, and that could be you. You tall, positioned wing shooter. Come on. You too could be the one that Coby White is gawking at because you just got drafted higher than expected. Still one of my favorite moments when Cam got drafted 11th back in 2019, and Coby White at his press conference just after he got drafted, just going off about it. But now that same Cam that was like, we're really drafting him 11th, that I've seen all over Twitter now, people are saying, oh, we're overpaying for him. All right, take that as you will, but he is now a vital piece of an NBA franchise that are valuing that all NBA franchises are valuing what Cam Johnson brings at a higher and higher and higher level. So count him out at your own risk. By the way, he is not the only Tar Heel that's making good. Harrison Barnes staying with the Kings. I love all these guys staying. Something about those Tar Heels. 3 years, $54 million. Coby White staying with the Bulls, 3 years, $40 million. And so, and you know, there's other things, but I just want to see these guys continue to grow and be valued and looked at, and people realizing, hey, North Carolina is not some also ran in the NBA. Like they have really good NBA professionals today, right? And I think that's the thing that's, again, so many people had said is, yeah, they were great. They were, but they're not doing anything now. So the Tar Heels need to keep putting guys in who can do it. Now, interestingly, they put nobody into the NBA from this year's draft. Nobody, unless you count Walker Kessler from last year's draft. And right now, the projections show that there are not any Tar Heels in next year's draft either. what could that mean to counteract what we just talked about with Cam Johnson? We'll look at that in just a second. But first, this episode of Locked on Tar Heels is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run to anything associated with the All-Star game, which, by the way, if you're watching, you notice that I am rocking my Braves pullover today because they had eight players selected for the All-Star game, a franchise record, and I just had to support my dudes. All of this comes on an app that is safe, secure, and it's super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So go to FanDuel.com to sign up today. FanDuel.com/locked on to get $200 up to, $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, folks, I want to remind you there's a fun new way that you can submit listener questions, a video that you can send in to lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Just 10 to 15 seconds, your name, where you're from, and your question. Do it portrait mode, landscape, whatever you want to do. I'll get it and add it in to the show. So would love for you to utilize that way to connect with us. And in fact, we'll use our first one of those coming up later this week. Okay, now we just talked about Cam Johnson and Tar Heels hopefully helping change the narrative of what the Tar Heels look like in the NBA. One of the problems is if they're not putting guys into the NBA through the draft, then that is something of an issue. And so ESPN recently, obviously following the draft, the 2023 draft, publications are all starting to put out a way too early 2024. And ESPN is one of the few that I've noticed that actually went ahead and put out a full 2-round draft. What's interesting, perhaps a little disheartening about that, is that in ESPN's mock draft, there are no Tar Heels taken in that draft. Not Elliot Cadeau, not Armando Bacot, not RJ Davis, nobody. Now, I've seen a couple other places like SB Nation has Cadeau going 14th, the last pick in the lottery. And so, there's some people giving him love, but I just want to roll with this ESPN one, one of the more known entities out there. And so as we think about that, I want to remind, as I did a minute ago, if Carolina doesn't have anyone drafted in 24 next season, they didn't just have anyone drafted this year in 23, not Leaky or Pete. They both signed on with different types of contracts after the draft. And you could make an argument, although I won't, that Carolina had nobody drafted in 2022 either. Although Walker Kessler, who was at that point coming out of Auburn, was drafted in the 22 draft. I believe, I know it's weird in this era, like because of so many transfers, what school claims him. I'm great with both Carolina and Auburn claiming him, just like I would be okay with both Pitt and Carolina claiming Cam Johnson. Like he is both those guys are technically alums of both of those schools. And so I'm all about counting it. Now, here's why I bring this up. And here's why it's interesting, because historically, the last time Carolina had a gap of 2 or more years without a draft pick was all the way back in 02, 03, 04. And understandably so that the Tar Heels wouldn't necessarily have somebody drafted in that era. But looking since then, from 05 to 21 up to that last draft where Carolina had somebody drafted before, Walker Kessler in 22, nobody this year. Other than that, from 05 to 2021, only 3 times have the Tar Heels not had somebody drafted: 08, 2011, and 2018. That's insanely impressive. That's having someone drafted in 14 out of 17 drafts in that span. In fact, if we go back to the entire history of the 2-round NBA draft, which is what we have now. There's just 2 rounds of the NBA draft, 1 pick for every team, as long as everything's normal. This year we were down 2 picks, whatever. But that goes back to 1989. 89 was the first draft that had just 2 rounds. If we expand it to that, 89 up through the present, that is 35 drafts. You want to know how many droughts of 2+ years there were? Like the one that we might potentially have next year if no Tar Heels are drafted? 2. Just 2. The one I mentioned from 02 to 04, that was 3 years. And then another one, 1999 to 2000. There were no Tar Heels drafted in either of those. That's it right now. In that 35 draft era, only twice has Carolina had a streak of 2 or more years without a draft pick. And they're in danger of doing it for just the third. But it's never been more than 3 years at a time. Really, really crazy stuff. I would love to go look at other teams and their ability to maintain that level of consistency. And of those 35 drafts, the only ones that Carolina has not had anyone drafted are 1990, 99, 2000. We just talked about those, 02, 03, 04, and then 08, 11, 18, and 23. That's pretty stinking good. That's, if I counted right, let me count it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So only 10 of the 35 modern NBA drafts have the Tar Heels not had someone drafted. That means they've had a draft pick in 71.4% of the drafts going back to 1985. That's really impressive to look at what Carolina has done throughout this stretch. But again, I want to point out the opposite side of what we talked about with Cam Johnson. We are in danger, if the Tar Heels don't have anyone drafted next season, of just the third ever two-year drought of Carolina players being drafted. So here's what this all boils down to. Is this a cause for concern for us, for Carolina, for the fan base, whatever? Potentially. I think it would definitely be a hurt in recruiting, because you know that other teams would be negative recruiting against the Tar Heels. I think part of the issue in those 2 droughts that we've had, 99, 2000, and 02, 04, think about those years. Lots of turmoil, lots of changes coming out of the Coach Smith era when he retired pretty abruptly. And then you have the Coach Guthridge era, the Coach Doherty era, and everything that came along with that. And then getting to Coach Williams. And you notice immediately after Coach Williams is there, obviously no Tar Heels drafted in 04, but then 05 and onward, it's just gone gangbusters until these last couple years. Forgive me. Because now we have this same potential drought as Carolina has switched from Coach Williams to Coach Davis. And so you have a part of the potential worry is, man, part of why things went poorly is because there were no draft picks, and that was in the Matt Doherty era, and kind of the Bill Guthridge era as well, as things aren't really kind of living up to what you hoped for. I really, really hope that that's not what's going to be the case with Coach Davis, that he's got things figured out, or will get things figured out in a more full and ongoing consistent way. But you have to be a little bit worried when you look at some of that data and realize some of the parallels to it. Now, I know there's a multitude of factors that play into NBA draft picks and NBA draft decisions and things like that. So how much, does a coach have to do with that? Well, at least some amount, because of recruiting and development and other things. But there are so many variables that you can't fully put that on Coach Davis or anyone. It's just interesting that the couple droughts that Carolina has had have lined up with those times of coaching turnover at Carolina, or, in the case of Coach Doherty, somebody that just didn't really work out. So you keep those other things in mind. Now, I will say this as well. I would be shocked if we get to next summer, the summer of 2024, and there's no Tar Heel name called on draft night for the NBA. Whether it's Elliot Cadeau, whether it's Baycott sliding into the back of the second round, whether it's RJ convincing some team like, hey, my talent overshadows my height and you want me, those kind of things. I fully expect there to be somebody, but there is a possibility of it not happening. And I think that is not cause for alarm, but maybe just that's curious. Let's not let that happen much more. All right, folks, I have kind of a mixed bag of mixed nuts to wrap up the show today. Several different various things that are happening and want to get you up to date with those. And we'll do that in just a second. Okay, last week, several times, we were talking about the FIBA U19 team, which has Ian Jackson on it, who is part of the Carolina class of 2024. Since we've last spoken, they beat Japan 105-61 in the quarterfinals. Pretty even distribution of time in that game. Ian Jackson himself had just shy of 16 minutes played, or had 6 points, 3 of 6 shooting, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Very consistent across the board. But then this under-19 team lost to France in the semifinals 89-86. France has grown and gotten better at basketball, but still feels like a game you should be winning. And interestingly, in that game, Ian Jackson only played just north of 3 minutes, no points, 0 for 1 from the field, 1 rebound, 1 assist. And I know he's one of the younger guys on the team, but still odd that his playing time went way down in that elimination game. And then the third place game, the Americans lost 84-70 to Turkey. And I'm inclined to be like, what? That doesn't make it. But, it's just that thing of you are fully anticipating playing in the championship game, the gold medal game, the first place game, whatever you want to call it. And then it's just like, man, I don't even want to play in this third place game. Who cares? And I really wouldn't be shocked if there was some of that mentality going into it. But anyway, in that third place game, Ian Jackson played 19 minutes, 2 points, 1 of 3 shooting, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 steal. And so his production and playing time kind of went down a little bit there at the end, but it's so hard to truly take anything away from these events. And so I would caution myself and all of us to not read too much positively or negatively into what Ian did at the FIBA U19 tournament. Well, switching back over to the big boys, we've also got the FIBA World Cup, Basketball World Cup 2023, not U19, not U20, nothing, like the grown men. And that's going to take place in the Philippines, in Japan, and in Indonesia. They're all kind of sharing the love there. That's going to take place August 25th through September 10th. Has 2 Tar Heels on it, and that would be Cam Johnson and Walker Kessler. Interestingly enough, those 2 guys, both of whom we were talking about earlier in terms of recent draft picks that we're calling Tar Heels. And so congrats to both of those guys for making this team, and we will see how they fare in late August and early September. Now, moving on with our mixed bag of mixed nuts, want to say a big word of congratulations to former Tar Heel pitcher Zac Gallen, member of the Diamondbacks now, who are surprisingly, by the way, in first place in the NL West over the Dodgers and Padres, who are not doing it. And so big congrats to Zac. Hopefully he'll get a shot at the All-Star game and get to show what he can do. One final note for today of things going on is that Summer League starts today for the NBA. And there's a couple different leagues that take place before the official NBA stuff goes on in Las Vegas coming up really soon. But there are opportunities to catch both Leaky Black and Pete Nance coming up this week. So the Hornets that Leaky's playing for play Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Those Hornets also play Wednesday, Friday, and next Sunday. So plenty of opportunities to see Leaky who hopefully, man, just does his thing, and you would love to see that. And then the Cavaliers and Pete Nance will play next weekend on Friday, and then again next Sunday. So mark your calendars for those. Make sure you tune in to cheer on those Tar Heel guys. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels, kicking off the week the right way. Love to see guys like Cam and Kobe and Harrison getting paid and continuing to do their thing and represent the University of North Carolina. I want to thank you all again for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch of the day, especially you everydayers. We're so grateful to you for tuning in. Speaking of which, if you would, go leave a 5-star review. Let everyone know why you love being part of the Locked On Tar Heels community. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Heels. Follow me on Twitter at Isaac Shade. If you want to email the show, whether it's a video question or whatever you want to talk about, again, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. All right, folks, want to remind you one other thing. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, smash the like button, leave comments to let us know you are here and your thoughts on this whole weird narrative about North Carolina in the NBA. Hey, folks, it is always a great day to be a Tar Heel. I'll talk to you again tomorrow, but until then, peace.